Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Ty. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really cool guest today. Her name is Michele Johnston. She's a motivational speaker and empowerment coach. And I'm just so excited to have you here today, Michele.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here too. Like we were already chatting and I'm like, okay, let's get this party started. So
Oh, I know. I was like, wait, we're already having a good conversation. Let's get this recorded. So why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about you and what you offer and what you do?
I am an motivational speaker and empowerment coach, and I work primarily with women who are entering their rediscovery phase of life and journeying towards their midlife awakening. There's no such thing as crisis anymore. It's an awakening because it's a fantastic phase in life where you're discovering, maybe rediscovering who your true self is and kind of stepping into that power. And it's super exciting. And it's almost like being a toddler again and rediscovering the world and what the universe has to offer you. That's what I do by profession. I am a mom to four kids, which we'll talk about as I share my story and my experiences and into my own rediscovery and awakening. I live in California and, really happy to say I'm through most of the shit in my life and living my best life.
I just really love how you changed the midlife crisis to midlife awakening. That is not only a positive spin on it, right? But that's really what a crisis is. Like if you look at past generations' ideas of midlife crises, it was really people just trying to figure out who the heck they are, right? Like
Mhm.
that's all it is. So if you shift it to an awakening, now it doesn't sound so scary. It doesn't sound so bad. It looks more like let's get curious and see
Yep.
what is happening. And yeah, I love that shift and I love phrasing that's different because it makes you think of it differently. So that is awesome. With that said, I'm assuming you may have gone through your own midlife awakening and that's probably what led you here. So what
Yeah.
brought you into this work?
I'll give you a little back history on me. I was raised with really strict ideology of what a woman, a wife, and a mother should be. And, of course, I looked to my mother. I was raised in a very strict religious environment. So I really drew on the knowledge and the mentoring from these teachers and these women that were in my life. And I genuinely felt like my sole purpose in life was to be a wife and a mother, and went on through my teenage years and whatnot. And I hit the age of 18. And like most of us do, we discover our independence. And some of us go through a little rebellious stage. I certainly did. And in hindsight, I see now that that was when I actually first discovered who Michelle was, who I authentically was. I started getting a feel for it. I loved adventure. I love the adrenaline rush. I love to laugh. I have the sense of humor of a 12-year-old boy, like, all these things that was raised with thinking like that's not appropriate for a girl. And I kind of tapped into that. But around the age of 20, I started getting that little nagging voice in my head saying, hey, Michelle, you need to reel it in. You need to start thinking about getting married and having kids. So that's what I did. I found a nice young man and we were married, and I had the first of my four kids at 23, and I had made it, right? I was a wife and I was a mom, and I dove headfirst into those roles. One kid and then another and then another, and you're just caught in the chaos of life. But I always said it's a chaos that I wouldn't trade for the world. And I feel like a lot of us mothers feel that way. Like it's a wonderful, crazy. But at the same time, I was trying to manage the home and manage the kids and volunteering and trying to put on this perfect persona to the outside world of how my home was and how I was maintaining the home and how I was holding up as a woman. But in reality, I was completely self-critical. I had these extremely high expectations that were impossible to reach. I mean, to be quite honest, I was trying to be a Martha Stewart on steroids, and it just was not happening for me. But it was something that I kept inside of me. So I became super self-critical. I became depressed, and I was really unhappy with my life overall. It wasn't until my youngest child went off to preschool where I actually had this moment in my house. It was silent. All the chores were done. And, this moment that I've been waiting for like 15 years was finally here where I could kind of finally do stuff for myself. And I was like, oh shit, what do I do? I realized in that moment that I didn't really have any hobbies. I didn't know what I enjoyed. My whole life had been focused on being a mom and a homemaker. I had completely lost sight of who I was as an individual. So I really had this kind of come to Jesus moment like, okay, well, what do I do with myself? And for me, it was stripping things down to the very basic. At this point in time in my life, I was pre-diabetic and I had chronic hypertension. So for me, it made sense to let's start focusing on your health, not only my physical health, but I started looking for, at the time, YouTube was huge. Podcasting wasn't a big thing. So I was looking for YouTube influencers, women who had a message of self love and self care and empowerment. And I was just kind of grasping for straws, looking for anything that I felt aligned with that could help me learn to love myself, probably for the first time in my entire life. So I started focusing on my health and my self love and self care. And really, that started my journey into rediscovering and falling in love with myself.
There's so many things to touch on because I'm sure that many of our listeners can relate to everything that you just shared. I mean, the religious upbringing is kind of hit or miss, but I do think there are
Mhm.
a lot of women who were indoctrinated into this idea of you, even from millennials. I think that millennials were probably one of the last generations to fall into that idealism, but I definitely experienced that. Not, I don't think to the extreme, because I think by then the structures were starting to kind of break down. So like I wanted the old ways, the traditional ways, because that's like
Mhm.
what I wanted, right? That's what was put on us, even as
Mhm.
kids. But then there was that small part of me that was like, but I want more, And
Mhm.
it wasn't until I ended up having to leave my husband because of he had his own demons he was fighting and stuff, and kind of stepping into that single mom role that I was just like, oh, wait a second. And that's when I started taking down all the traditional idealisms and stuff. But
Mhm.
I know a lot of people, a lot of women especially, can relate to this idea of I have to be the perfect woman. I have to be the perfect mom. I have to be the perfect
Mhm.
wife. Just that perfect image of Biddy Crocker. And like you said, Martha
Yep.
Stewart. And um, especially there's so much mom guilt too. You throw that on there, and then you also have like there's no time for you. So I actually really love the fact that once you're young, you as your youngest in daycare, right? Once you're
Yeah.
younger in daycare and you finally had the space, that you actually took the time to figure out who you were. Because I feel like some women, especially who weren't more on the awakened side, would probably just dived into some other thing just because
Mhm.
should or that was the next step. So I love that for you, it shook you up enough to be like, wait a minute, where do I fit in? So
Yeah, I mean,
love that.
after so many years, it was like I was like, okay, I finally get to take care of me, but I didn't know where to start to even do that. So, yeah, it was a huge pivot in my life, and there were steps along the way. I mean, I fell in love with health. I fell in love with going to the gym. The gym became my happy place. It actually became my non-negotiable. My kids knew mom's working out. Okay, that's what she does. And I talk a lot about that with my clients, and we work to that to find your happy and making that a non-negotiable. Whether for me it was going to the gym, whether it's doing yoga, whether it's going and journaling at the beach for an hour. I started exploring photography because I was trying to find a hobby as well. What exactly do I like to do? And I realized, well, I always take my family's photos at the holiday time, for our cards. maybe I should learn how to use this fancy camera. And so I signed up for an adult ed course in photography. And another example is I always wanted to learn how to, get into trading and stocks and stuff. So I took another adult ed class in stocks and trading. So there's so many resources out there. And if you're not knowing where to start, just stripping it down and looking at what you do on the daily in your own home, it could be bedtime stories. You come up with the bedtime stories at night. Well, maybe explore creative writing. So when you start tapping into those little things, it opens up windows and doors to other opportunities, other ideas, and you start getting more and more curious about life and wanting to expand more. And as I like to call, not create a bucket list, but wouldn't it be cool if list? Wouldn't it be cool if I did that aerial acrobatic class? Wouldn't it be cool with I learned how to play the piano? All of a sudden, like, the universe is the limit. And, the world is just so open to you to explore, and you have that toddler curiosity again. So I started with the gym, and I ended up setting a huge goal of being in a fitness competition. And in fact, I did 3, but even though like I was in this awakening because I had learned how to love myself, I was taking care of myself, I found my happy, I was pushing my boundaries, and I was expanding. It also triggered a lot of resistance. And I'm sure you have found too that when you do major life shifts, a lot of time there's resistance. And it's not necessarily from the people in your life. It could be, the universe likes to throw little stumbling blocks in the way. That's growth, and lessons. But I was met with some resistance from my husband. He was super proud of me for doing the competition, but I received so much attention as a result. His demons and insecurities came to surface, and he wondered where he had a place in my life anymore. And something that started off so small that we tried to work through ended up turning into a very controlling and psychologically abusive marriage. And ultimately, I was faced with the decision of, do I choose myself and my happiness, or do I totally revert back to where he wanted me to be in this place of stagnation? And I chose my happiness. And it was probably one of the darkest periods in my life. So yeah, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, this awakening. It's tough personal growth, physical growth, and yeah, it's hard to get through sometimes.
I am so glad that you mentioned the other side of that, because you're right. While the growth is worth it, coming into your own is worth it and all of that, there is almost always some kind of resistance or pushback. And that was actually going to be my next question for you, was how supportive your family and husband was. I kind of already had a feeling either A, you were very lucky and you had someone very supportive, which is rare, but that's something that I would hope for everybody, every woman coming to find herself. I hope that she has a supportive partner, right? But I think in reality, most of the time, and they don't, it's a very rare thing. Either the partner is willing to grow with them or then you outgrow them. And it's a really sad concept, especially when you're indoctrinated with this idea of when you get married, it's forever.
Yeah.
And then you have to come to terms with the fact that no, sometimes we outgrow people, and that's okay too. Like, you don't have to be shamed for needing to move on. And like you said, pick your own happiness. Because what kind of a quality of life is it if you put yourself in someone else's box and dim your own light to make them happy? What kind of life is that?
Yes, so, exactly.
And I'm sure that that's something that you come across a lot with your clients. I feel like there's been a huge shift in this area though. Like, so the other question I was going to ask you, when you first started the self-love journey, how long ago was that? Just out of curiosity.
It's started just about 10 years ago.
Okay. So I'm guessing that the idea of self-love was not very mainstream back then. It was probably more mainstream than 20 years ago, but it wasn't as like right now, anyone who's stepping into that journey, there's a plethora of information, places you can go, YouTubers, TikTok, books. There's so much information about self-love and finding your happiness and choosing you. And, this idea of you have to start here and then you can give back to the world, which I love too. But it wasn't it wasn't that easy back then either. So, I mean, just the fact that you were able to navigate that even in a world where the rest of the world was still kind of living in the old paradigm. Were other people in your life supportive of your decisions, or did you also get other pushback from family and friends?
Yeah, 10 years ago, it was, like you said, so different. And that's why I was saying I was really grasping for straws. And I that resorted to YouTube and trying to find someone that I felt might actually understand what I was going through, that felt aligned and supportive to me, even though they didn't know me, of course, because coming out of the church, like that was where all my social base was, to be honest. So I couldn't talk to any of my friends because they were all trying to live like I had been trying to live. And I couldn't talk to my husband because he wouldn't understand either. And, for a time, my parents didn't understand either. And I got the lectures of the grass is not greener on the other side. And so I really did this journey on my own. And that's a really big piece of why I want to share my story on podcasts and, social media and platforms, because I don't want any other woman to ever feel like they're alone in their process, or that they're crazy and, they're losing their mind, or they should be happy with what they have because it's everything that they had been striving to have. But, they're missing that sense of purpose. All those things I was feeling. And I never want another woman to feel that. And you are so right. We're so fortunate to be in a time where we have the platforms, we have the resources, we have the books to find that support and that guidance. And women, for like the first time in ever, are really finding their voice and stepping into their power. And that's what makes this period of time so freaking exciting. But to answer your question, I didn't have that support. It wasn't in probably about 3 or 4 years into my journey when my family could actually start seeing that shift in me and see how much happier I was. A lot of my friends in the church had disappeared, those friends were no longer friends. And that's part of this process of leveling up and evolving and growing too, is that the people who were in your life, it's kind of like the universe's natural selection. They kind of like leave. If they're not willing to grow with you, then they kind of start trickling away out of your life. But in place of them come these other people and opportunities that are at your vibration, a little bit higher. They're there to support and love and help you level up, and they meet you right where you are. So, even though it was sad to see some friendships die and go away, the positive that came into my life was so much greater.
Yeah, it sounds like you found your tribe. You found the people
Yeah.
who really were going to support you for you,
Mhm.
and not with other hidden agendas, right?
Mhm.
My line of work, I'm a spiritual advisor slash tarot reader. So I work, and I don't do like predictive type readings. It's more healing. It's more like based in the now to help women and men. Like I work with men too, but most of my clients tend to be women. But anyways, they come to me more for like, I feel lost. And then I, give them guidance on how to get where they want to go. But one of my favorite trio of cards is well, I guess it's not trio, it's two cards. The Hanged Man, which is, I like to call that the cocoon card, right? So we go into this cocoon, and that's basically what you went through during that period where you were basically shedding friendships and idealisms and beliefs you were letting go. But the cocoon, most people don't understand, is it's a messy process. From the outside looking in, it just looks like this little thing on a tree that nothing's happening. But on the inside, caterpillar is literally turning into a different creature. It's becoming a gooey mess, and then it has to re-put itself back together. And that's really the process of transformation. And so when you come out of that, I like to say that it's the sun card that I refer to as like the butterfly. And I like to use that analogy of, you've done all this work to find yourself. You have these beautiful wings you want to show off, but sometimes we're afraid to because people still know us as the caterpillar, and then they'll recognize us as the butterfly. So we have two choices. Sometimes we feel like in order to keep these friendships that are no longer serving us, sometimes we feel like we have to hide our wings, like tuck them away, like, oh no, I don't have these wings, and the whole idea is, no, you're supposed to embrace these new wings and embrace this new life. And those that are meant to be there will be there, or will be attracted to you. Those that can't see or support you, unfortunately, they have a different agenda, and you have to focus on your own happiness.
I love that so much. It makes me want to bring out my tarot cards. Because as I like stripped down and like left the church, like I went through this process of rediscovering my own spirituality as well. And tarot cards, I started getting into tarot cards and strictly just as you do, like just I needed the guidance. I needed the reassurance I was on my journey's path. I was on the right path. And that's what I needed from my own personal readings. I love that. And the embracing the wings. Once I learned to embrace all my imperfections as the unique qualities that made me exactly who I was meant to be, my complete view of everything totally changed. And that's really when I was able to fully embrace my authenticity. And I'm so huge on authenticity. To live a fulfilled life, you need to be able to embrace all that you are and fall in love with all that you are. And then the right people will come into your lives.
So what do you find common in most of the clients and women that you work with? Is there like a common thing that you see, and what advice do you have for that particular issue?
Most women start reaching out to me when they're feeling kind of stagnant in their life. They're feeling a lack of purpose and needing some direction. So the very basic things that we start with is identifying any mindset blocks, any negative narratives that they've been carrying through their life, and breaking free out of those and changing the direction of their mindset and their thought process, and creating, releasing the old stories that they've been carrying with them and creating new ones, and really getting to that place of picking themselves up from the bottom of the totem pole and working our way up the totem pole and making themselves a priority. And it's just the very small little basic steps create these bigger, stepping stones to feeling more fulfilled and towards our purpose. As women, I feel like we set these really big, lofty goals. We go 0 to 100. The new year comes along, a birthday, and I'm going to make sure I'm reading every day for a half hour. I'm going to make sure I'm walking every day for an hour. And even though they seem like the simplest things, in the reality of life, and especially as you're starting your journey, those things are actually really big and really difficult to maintain. So, starting off with the really small things, finding ways to bring a little bit of happy into your life on a daily basis is where I always recommend starting out. It helps you prioritize yourself a little bit, it helps show yourself self love and a little bit of self care. Whether it's lighting your favorite scented candle in your room at the end of the day to make it feel more zen, or blasting your favorite music as you're working through the house, or putting a spritz of that special occasion only perfume on and going out, for your day. For me, it's chocolate. I care for myself with chocolate. I have my secret freezer stash. No one knows where it is. No one gets into it. But I treat myself to a little piece of chocolate. If I'm needing a little emotional support chocolate in the afternoon, I treat myself to a piece of chocolate or the end of the day. So just finding the little things that are giving yourself love and bring a little bit of happy into your day, those little things are maintainable, and then those start a momentum towards bigger things. And again, opening up the world of curiosity and wanting to try new things. So it's the little steps, it's the little itty bitty things create the bigger momentum and evolving and growth.
I really love that, because I mean, it's so funny. So I was thinking about it, like, yeah, we do tend to pick high goals, but what you're suggesting isn't even like coming up with a habit. It's
Mhm.
just finding little things that make you happy. And that's totally doable. There's no expectations, because you don't even have to stick to any kind of routine. It's just kind
Mhm.
of find a little thing you could do for yourself to engage in that makes you feel happy. And I love how they could be as simple as putting on a perfume before you leave, to kind of boost your confidence, or
Mhm.
yeah, lighting a candle, or take, if you want to read a book, sit down and let yourself read for 30 minutes, but
Yeah.
without having to, like, I think because for me, it's like when you said that, I was thinking about myself, and I struggle with ADD. I didn't know I had it until recently because, back then they always believed it was mainly boys, like women
Yeah.
didn't. And it's like everything I check off all the lists and I'm like, oh my God, I have ADD. It makes so much sense now. So like for me, routines are really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I myself up for it. Like, why can't I just do the same thing every single day? So that's been like my challenge. But I really like that's so simple. It's just start there. And there's a fluidity to it too, right? Because again,
Mhm.
you're not like trying to stick into some kind of like box or just follow what feels good.
Exactly. I have ADHD too, and again, was never diagnosed. So, and it's the same thing. I'm like really good for like a week and a half with structure, and then it just falls to pieces. So, really starting to feel more aligned with my inner self, trusting my intuition, listening to my body. What do I need? And it could be that reading the book or just like put in my headphones and just listen to music. I find great therapy and processing in music. So, getting in tune with your body is another huge piece of self love and care. So, really, what feels aligned with you? What's going to bring that little, piece of happiness and joy into your life? Listen to what your body and what it needs.
And I love that too, because I think a lot of the times, especially when you do the personal development growth, we tend to be up in our mind a lot, right? Because it's a lot of mentality, which is great. I mean, shifting the mentality is like the first start. But
Mm,
there's different aspects that we forget about, like our body, for instance. Our body is our vehicle. This is what we live in every
mhm.
single day. And it's like a lot of times we forget that our body is as important as our mind. And
Yeah.
then we also, for those that like don't like to have a spiritual connection, they forget that it's the mind, body, and soul. The older teachings have always brought those three together because you need that too. When I was in therapy, I still remember towards the end of my therapy, I saw my therapist for a good 5 years. He was very helpful, but towards the end, he was kind of like, you need to leave the nest. You got this, But he started drawing hints for me. He'd say, that sounds like a spiritual problem. And I was like, what does that mean? I'm not a spiritual
Mhm.
person. I felt like I was agnostic, but I didn't know, I didn't have any. I was like you, I came from a religious background, but I kind of broke away from that when I was like in my late teens. But it made me start to kind of experiment. And that's how I found my beliefs now. But I will say that spiritual aspect has made such a difference in me understanding my mentality
Mhm.
and understanding why my body is important. It makes me it all makes sense. But if you're missing a piece, there's definitely like a disconnect. And it's all
Yeah.
for all those three things.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, when I was discovering my spirituality, and I'm curious, for you, once I stripped away all the religious bits and just literally down to just be a good person. Just be a good person. And then I like built up from there. One of the very influential books for me in the start of my journey was The Universe Has Your Back by Gabby Bernstein. So that actually became a big motto for me as I was going through my difficult phases in my journey was the universe has my back. And it's still true to this day. The universe is not going to let me fall. There's learning, there's lessons. I'm going through shit and that's okay. And I'm not meant to see the outside of it yet, and that's cool. The universe isn't going to let me fail. That was huge for me. And that was really the start of my spiritual awakening journey was that book and that as an influence in my life. So I was kind of curious, like what kind of propelled your spiritual journey?
For me, it was actually podcasts. It was, I mean, I had heard my therapist say several times at this point, that sounds like a spiritual problem. And I used to, well, my day job is I do a lot of gig work. So at the time I was doing Instacart, now I do DoorDash, but I'm driving a lot. And I was kind of getting tired of listening to the same music over and over. You know, I mean, I love my music, but it was getting kind of old and I wanted to expand. So I just like went to my Apple Podcasts, like my app, which I've never used before, just typed in spiritual podcasts, you know, I found a few core ones. And the first one that really got me was this podcast called Expanded. And it was what I needed because it was rooted in science. It was like hypnotherapy kind of, but it's all about manifestation, but through hypnotherapy. So like with these workshops, you're able to do like inner child healing and shadow work. And these were like key terms, obviously, to like self-development, but I didn't know that at the time. It was more like, all right, we'll just test the waters and see what's here. And when I accepted the idea, you know, the challenge of doing this workshop, I heard my intuition for the first time. And it was loud and clear. And that was kind of my first step into like, that's when I knew that this work wasn't just personal development. It was going to be more. I was just putting my groceries away one random Tuesday, you know, just a random day. And I just bought the workshop and I was planning on doing it. And out of the blue, but crystal clear, I heard, if you want to do this work, you can't keep alcohol in the house. And I was like, what?
Wow.
So crystal clear. And I had no intention. I mean, I wasn't an alcoholic by any means, but I was a single parent. So like a glass of wine a night was kind of like my wind down time. You know what I mean? And society says, get your glass of wine, you deserve it. So that was kind of like my treating myself thing. And so I had no like intentions of stopping. It wasn't something that was in my radar. It was just something that was like dropped in my head. If you want to do this work, you need to not keep alcohol in the house. And it was basically through that, it was kind of trial and error. But I realized that the time that I would have to do this work would be when my daughter goes to bed, which was usually when I'd have my glass of wine. And wine, I'm not clear. And I'm, you know, also affecting my body, you know, and there's a bunch of things that are happening so basically I had to clear myself out. But that was the first time I ever heard my intuition. And I know it was my intuition because it wasn't me, you know, that was not
Wow.
God. And so that's really what kind of, you know, started me into the work was I realized there was something else there. Now in hindsight, I don't really drink anymore. And I don't really care to drink anymore. I mean, I will on occasion, but I don't think about it. I don't need it. It's just kind of like, if I go out with friends, maybe I'll have something, but I don't, you know, as far as it goes. But back then, if it was around, I was going to have a glass. Like there was no question.
Yeah.
I can have a bottle of wine in my fridge and not touch it. And you know, it just is like, do I want it today? Do I want to mess with my body and my vibration? No, I'm good.
Right. I love that so much. Wow. And it totally, everything makes sense. Like, yeah, you need that clarity to do your work. So, wow, what a huge moment in your journey.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And that's kind of when like I said, like I knew there was something more and it took a bit, but that's how tarot found me too. I was already reading for myself, but I was like, what's my purpose? And tarot kept like showing up and I was like, no one would take me seriously. And you know, but the thing, it's so funny how intuition works, but it's like a tap on the shoulder. Hello.
Yeah, those signs. And I know that like this is something that I knew we were going to end up talking about is the signs. And now like hearing your story and you're like, well, that tarot kept coming into and I was like, well, and I'm the same freaking way. I'm like, if I see something like the same like random thing like twice, I'm like, okay, it's a sign. I hear you, you know, or angel numbers for me, 222, 1111. Those are big numbers for me that I see all the time. But when I was really stepping into my spirituality, like affirmations, motivational quotes, all that, I was trying to bring in all the positivity and I saw my numbers all the time. And it's kind of cool when you have that intuition, when you have that trust in the universe to be able to like put things out to it. One of my big affirmations was, I am ready to receive any and all abundance that the universe has for me. You know, I would say it over and over and over. And now I have to check myself before I put something out there. Like, I'm like, okay, am I truly ready? Because I know if I put it out there, it's going to be coming for me. So now I get in this place where I play this. I'm like, okay, wait, am I really ready? Just take the leap. You're ready, you know, but it is kind of cool when you get so in line with your spirituality and your intuition and and you start seeing, these little signs, these little nudges from the universe of the direction you're supposed to go, that you are on the right path, you are doing the things for your higher self that you need to be doing. It's really cool when you step into that space.
Yeah, absolutely. And same here. Like lately, I've been seeing 222 everywhere,
Mhm.
everywhere. And I don't necessarily always believe like the descriptions on Google. I think that it's something more, for me, I feel like it's like telling me to balance more. But I mean, I'm seeing it everywhere. The other day I was
Mhm.
driving and I saw a billboard that said a phone number, 1-800-222-2222. And I was like, what kind of a phone number is that? I see it all the time. And when you start looking for things, it'll start popping up, especially when you have
Mhm.
a meaning to it and you understand what it means. And sometimes you don't, and you have to kind of like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm seeing it. What's the give me something more, universe? You know what I mean? Yeah, I love looking for angel numbers if I see them, and especially when it's like when it correlates to something.
Yeah.
One day when I was out doing an event where it was like one of my best event days, where I was like at farmers market. And I was kind of stuck in the back where no one saw me. So I kind of didn't expect to have a very good, very busy day with my readings and stuff. But it ended up not only being the most profitable day, but I saw 333 like 4 different times in that morning. Someone had a tattoo of 333. Someone was wearing a necklace with 333. Uh,
Wow.
there was a parking lot like right by where my car parked that said 333. So I was just like, okay. And then 333, I guess, is like about abundance and stuff. So it's like, okay, like of all of the things and like
Mhm.
necklaces and tattoos of this, seeing that in the same day. What?
Yeah. And then isn't it cool, like, when you like, okay, what does 333 mean? Like an afterthought, and you're like, "Oh, abundance. Okay, well, thanks, universe."
Like here I was already still thinking like, oh, no one's gonna really see me today. I'm at the
Yeah.
back of the place. No one's gonna know I'm here. And nope, it was being one of the best days. And it was like the universe was almost trying to tell me, like, change your mindset. Like, come on.
Yeah. Yep.
So what's one lesson in the work that you do that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, the biggest lesson for me, and I've already shared it once, but embracing your imperfections and changing that mindset of, being flawed, being a failure, not measuring up. Change that mindset to recognize that your imperfections actually are making you perfectly imperfect. They're actually the qualities that are completely meant and designed for you. And when you step into your authenticity and embrace these imperfections, you realize that they only elevate you. They only attract the people that are supposed to be in your life. They help you evolve and get you to your higher self and your journey and more towards your purpose. So truly that life lesson to check yourself when you're getting down on yourself and you're being self-critical and realizing like that snort you do when you laugh, like that makes someone else's day, you know? Those little things just make you authentically who you are meant to be.
And I think especially as women, that's really hard because we have media, we have these ideas of what we should look like. We have all this, we get hit all the time with body figures and personality traits. And then, it's hard to be hit with all this media and ideas of what women should be. And then being able to embrace yourself and knowing you're not like that, but also knowing that that's not real anyways. I think that's also hard because that's what you see every day. It's hard to think that, oh, well, I should be like that. And it's like, no, 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 that's separate. That's fake. That's not authentic, right? You're authentic and you're embodying so much more than, well, what that is, right? But being able to just be like, no, you do you. I'm going to do me and own that. And I think that that's especially hard in today's world. Not only do we have the old idealism that we talked about of what women should look like and what roles we play, but then you get the whole Photoshop and body images in there, and I think there's just
Yeah.
so many more subliminal messages that we have to kind of work through in order to love
Mhm.
ourselves as we are without feeling like we need to look or be anything else. And that's so I love that. And it sounds like you've found a pretty good way of really loving yourself. And I think that that's the best way that we can help the world is by starting with us, right? Because then we
Mhm.
can be a role model to show others it's possible. So
Mhm.
I love that that's something that you feel like you've learned, and now you can take that and really teach other women to step into that too.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not just with your peers, but your children, the example you set for your children. When I was going through my divorce, like, is this really worth it? And is it worth putting myself through and my kids? And, it was a really hard place to be. But I, was really hoping that I was leading by example and showing that my kids that their happiness does matter, their lives matter, and it's okay to make a pivot in your life if something doesn't feel aligned or it's no longer serving you. It's okay to make changes. You're not stuck in the place that you're meant to be for the rest of your life in that box from the time you're 20 until the time you die. So, one of the greatest privileges in life is that opportunity to continuously evolve.
Yeah, I can't stand the idea that you should stay married because of the kids. So yeah, you're totally speaking to the right person on that. I'm like, whenever I hear, well, we've got kids together, I'm like, but that doesn't matter. You're not happy, they know it. And not only that, but you're showing them, you're modeling to them a toxic relationship that they're gonna later think is normal. So it's not helping them at all. Especially they know way more than we give them credit for. So,
Yes.
and then also to kind of on that same point, like with my own daughter, I'm really mindful of the things that I say about myself in front of her. Now, granted, I mean, I do struggle with the self-loathing. I think all of us women struggle with that at some point, but
Mhm.
I try really hard not to say things in front of her like, "Oh, I'm so stupid." Like I try not to do that in front of her or
Mhm.
comment on like my weight gain or whatever. Like I try really hard to like watch what I say around her. I might internally struggle with some of these thoughts that I know like most women do, but I try really hard not to give that to her because
Yeah.
I know society's already going to try and hand that to her. I don't need her to, watch me
Yeah.
battle. So yeah, there's definitely a huge empowerment in like how you handle yourself with the next generation. And yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we did touch a little bit on signs and synchronicities, but do you have like a specific story of how either with the numbers or anything else in
Mm.
your life where things just unfolded in an uncanny way, right? That you're just like, that was definitely the universe. Do you have anything specific like that you could share?
Yes, ma'am, I do. So I have since remarried and I was thinking about this and sharing something and I was like thinking about my whole journey and my process in my life and really it's just yeah, it's really amazing when the universe, like, everything lines up, like, how it's supposed to be. So, the when I met my husband is what I want to share, and, he had gone through, a lot in his life, a real difficult divorce, and, a couple years ahead of me, and, I went through my journey to get to where I was, and, he was literally packing up and saying his goodbyes to move to a completely different state when we happened to connect online, as is how the dating world is these days. We ended up connecting online and discovered that not only did we go to the same elementary school together, but we graduated from the same high school together, and our paths never crossed that we can recollect. Um, we never met. And then, our lives took their paths and we went through our shit and our growing and all the things. And then we met in this way where he had sent me a friend request and I never accept friend requests from men. Never. And for whatever reason, I accepted his friend request and we started conversation and one thing led to another and we discovered, that we were born in the same hospital and the schools and the whole thing. And when we finally met and came together, I remember it was one of our first dates. We were driving around and he says to me, what's wild is that this doesn't feel like like, I met you for the first time, like a first time meeting. It feels like we've been reconnected, like a long lost friend, and you've been reconnected. Everything was so familiar. It was so right. And just all the little pieces to our stories and our journeys that led us to that moment where he was moving. I had gotten to a place in my life where I was okay with being alone. And I was actually super duper excited about the idea of being alone and doing my own thing. And I had these goals, and this is what I'm going to do, and freedom. And I was so excited. And then he dropped into my friend request. So there's like all these like little synchronicities that led up to us meeting. And then just that feeling and like we knew from the very beginning, like we were soulmates. The universe was working in our favor. And if one little thing had changed on either of our sides, we would have never met in the way that we had. So we absolutely, for sure, give all credit to the universe for bringing us together. And yeah, it was a pretty impactful and amazing thing.
Wow, that's awesome. It's like you guys were parallel, like you're living parallel lives until you're able to
Mhm.
finally cross at the right time. That's how it happens. It happens when you don't look for it, when you're not expecting it, when you don't need it, right?
Yeah.
It's like you were looking for someone to completely, you were like already good to be on your own. And then
Yeah.
I'm thinking he's a supportive partner who allows you the freedom that you desire too.
Mhm. Yeah, that partnership that I never had, and yeah, I just we are a true team, a true partnership. We balance each other out so perfectly. I remember doing some healing with a friend, and she's like, your guides are saying to make a list of the qualities you want in a man and then speak it out to the universe. And this was part of my like feeling okay with being on my own process. And so probably about 6 weeks or so before I met him, I made this list, I spoke it out to the universe, and then I just let it be. And after we met, I was reading through the list and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, check, 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 check. And I read it to him. I'm like, you are like all of these things. Again, all those, how that everything lines up and it's in the universe's divine timing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. So, do you believe this is my final question that I ask everybody? Do you believe that we all have a purpose?
Absolutely. We all have a purpose. Whether we find it or not is a different story. But, doing that self work, that development, and, really getting into tune with your, higher self and trusting yourself, trusting the universe, and getting really in sync with your intuition. There's so many different components and navigating life. I mean, life is so fucking hard. Like we know it and navigating it. And people say, trust the process. Trust the process. The universe has your back. It's all going to be fine. You can't just sit back and expect for it to fall in your lap either. Like that inner work has to take place too. So, absolutely. I believe everyone has a purpose, and all of our journeys are different and windy and crazy. And some of us get there and some of us don't. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's really a matter of, are you going to stay sleepwalking? Or are you going to wake
Mhm.
up? And it's more of that agenda of, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, and it's so sad. And so that's part of the reason I do this podcast, is I really hope that someone listens to this who never thought about their purpose, and by the through this, like listening to these different stories and things like that, they start to ask, well, wait, what's my purpose?
And I bet, like, even like in this place in your life now, you said, what if there's more? Like, I'm always like, I still have way more life to live. And so I know there's way more out there. So I get asked a lot if I've found my purpose or if I feel like I have. And so I've thought on this question. And so my answer is no, because even though I'm in a really fantastic place in life now, to say that I found my purpose would be to say that I've stopped evolving. And I sure of hell have not stopped evolving, but I know I'm well on my journey to finding my purpose, but there's still a lot of life ahead of me. And there's still pivots that are gonna, the universe is gonna throw. So, every little phase in your life is a piece to leading you towards your purpose.
Yeah, and I've heard it put this way too, that basically we all have a purpose, and you probably do, you probably are connected with your purpose, but it
Hmm.
evolves. It's not going to stay the
Yep.
same. And I mean, if it stays the same, that's like you said, it gets stagnant and it says that you're done growing, and we're never done growing. Actually, right there with you in that sense, because starting this podcast was a big up leveling for me because I got this huge download. And I did automatic writing for the first time, which I've never done before. It was just I just needed to get these thoughts out of my head, and then it was kind of wild what happened. But I basically was told, you're not a tarot reader, you are more than that. So like basically I was putting myself in a box. My business name was Journey Through Tarot, and I basically was told, you need to change your business name because your business name is keeping you in this box when you're supposed to be doing more. Like it's not just tarot. And I'm basically learning I'm more of a channel. The tarot is my tool, but I'm more of a channel. And so I'm still wrapping my head around that. But I was also kind of like told, like, you need to start a podcast, you need to use your voice, you need to help other people find their voice through your podcast and community. And I'm like, okay, I was just a tarot reader, like what? But it is, it's always evolving. And I will say, up until I had that experience, for the few months leading up to it, I was getting this feeling of, I feel like I should be doing more. I don't know what that means, and I don't know what else I can do, so I was kind of wrestling with this, what's more, I don't understand. And then it was like it just dropped on me. So I've been obeying, so to speak. I mean, within a week of that experience, I started getting my podcast together and getting interviews, and it's just kind of like taken off. So I'm like, okay, I'm here for the ride. I don't really
Yeah.
know what I'm here for, but I know that my initial purpose is to help empower people. Like that's underneath everything. Like when I give readings with people, my job is to put the power back in their put them back in the driver's seat of their own life, because 9 times out of 10, and it's probably more 10 out of 10, when they come to me, they're expecting me to tell them something they don't know. But what ends up happening is I end up telling them what they already know, but they just needed confirmation on. So it's more like, you already know the answer to this. You just needed someone else to give it to you in a mysterious way that no one else could have. That's all. But it's still coming from you. Podcast, giving the floor and the platform to hear these beautiful stories to help other people. It's just like, I think that's my underlying purpose, is I want to empower others. However that comes, whatever form it's going to turn into. But I think that that's ultimately what I want to accomplish and put in the world.
Yeah. So my mind is a little bit blown right now because my journey to where I'm at right now in the last year is very, very, very much like yours. March, April, May of last year, I was in a place in my career and what I was doing where I was like, I'm not feeling aligned. This doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm meant for so much more, but I don't know what the heck it is. And I'm just going to wait on the universe because I trust the universe will reveal it to me. And then I was sitting actually in a human design training, and my chart was being read. Yeah, you're like, my chart was being read, and she literally said almost the exact same thing to me. All your energy's in your throat. You're meant to speak. You're meant to be on a platform. You feel like you don't know the things, but Michelle, like, you know so much shit and you need to be sharing it with everyone. And she's like, you go through life having experiences and smashing it with a sledgehammer and just taking the little bits and pieces from your experiences that resonate, that are aligned with you, and you carry it over into the next phase in your life. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I totally do. But when she said, you are meant to speak and speak in authority, you are meant to share your experiences so that others can have and find success in their lives. I was like, oh, okay. And I had to sit on it for a few weeks because I was like, okay, wow, okay. What do I do now? What do I do now with this? And I was like, okay, I need to start speaking. I need to start speaking. Where do I start? And for me, it was podcasts as well. I'm like, I need to start guest speaking on podcasts and get really clear on my message and what I want to share. And so, yeah, I started guest speaking and I've been on oogles of podcasts now, but same, like I want women to feel so empowered in who they are and the strength that they have and their purpose. And yeah, So my mind's just a little bit blown right now because I was like, holy shit, like I like had the same like journey to like where I am sitting here right now with you.
I love
Yeah.
that. That's me confirmation because I always felt a little crazy when I'm like, I have this big download from the universe. I have to ask you though, now that you mentioned human design, what's your
Yeah.
strategy?
I'm a projector.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, yeah, same here.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Be projector. I'm definitely, that's part of what we do is we guide people and we are
Mhm.
able to see what other people can't see in the way that they need, yeah. So one projector to another. It's such a fun conversation. And there's just so much wisdom here. I really hope our listeners enjoy it and take something from it. I certainly love this conversation. So how can our listeners find you if they want to work with you as an empowerment coach or just find more of your work?
The best way to connect with me is through Instagram. My handle is Fiercely Authentic Coaching. So please do slide into my DMs. I love connecting with other women and hearing your stories and supporting. And I feel as a womanhead, that's what we need to be doing. And it's certainly empowering each other to step into that power and find our, true authentic selves. So Fiercely Authentic Coaching on Instagram, best way to find me.
Perfect. I will be sure to put that in the show notes. They can find you easier. I just, I love that because I think as women, the old paradigm was more competitive, right? It was like we're
Mhm.
supposed to fight against each other. It could only be one, right? Which is so stupid, but whatever. That was what we were believed in, and so random, but kind of similar. I just saw this post comparing Beyonce and Taylor Swift and kind of like making one less than the other, and I was like, come on. Like if you know anything about either of those artists, they support each other 100%. Because
Mhm.
they're doing their own thing their own way authentically. So like let's just stop with the comparing. They're both
Yeah.
awesome. We're all awesome. We're all, standing in our own power in our
Mhm.
own way. Like come on now, so I love that. It's we need to bring women together and uplift each other and
Yeah.
try and break each other down. Like the media needs to stop doing that. And we need
Absolutely. Mhm.
but yeah, I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved every minute.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you're wanting more, consider joining our free Facebook community called Spirit Journey Collective, your haven for spiritual exploration and personal growth. Dive into a supportive community where sharing spiritual experiences is encouraged. Unlock the power of intuition, embark on a journey of self-discovery, and connect with like-minded souls. If this sounds like a community you'd love to plug into, the link is in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.